Now move on with alacrity to the opening address to be delivered by Ross Fox. Ross is the Director of Catholic Education from the Archdiocese of Canberra and Goulburn. In this role, he has responsibility for a system of 56 Catholic schools across both ACT and New South Wales, with 21,000 students and more than 2,000 staff. He has held senior positions in Catholic education across Australia, including Executive Director of the National Catholic Education Commission and Director of Policy, Research and Communications in the Catholic Education Office of Melbourne. Happily, though, he is here in Nipaluna, Hobart with us this morning. Please make him very welcome.
Can I just begin by saying thank you for the work you do. We are on the front line of creating the nation and the world that we hope it to be through the education we're providing. So congratulations and thank you to all the teachers, principals and system leaders who are part of our gathering this morning. I hope for you it's going to be a really rich learning experience. I certainly have learned a tremendous amount from colleagues here. And I'm going to talk more about that. I want to also begin by saying I was at a conference last week for initial teacher education providers. And one of the presentations started with the supposition that the evidence is really clear, schools make no difference at all, teachers make no difference at all of our educational outcomes are determined by the background of the student and are the result of poverty and disadvantage in our community. So I want to begin just by saying I am incredibly optimistic. I believe that we can make a profound difference to the lives of our students through high quality instruction, through high quality teaching, through great schooling. And so my presentation today is going to unashamedly assume that we actually can make a difference, that we as educational leaders can change the destiny of our students in our care. And I also believe it's really important to be here, to learn from each other, to reflect. If we're successful in our work as educational leaders and educators, we are, in my view, going to increasingly obsess and talk about less and less because our practice will get more precise. And I'll talk to that in a moment. But just to acknowledge my own context, so I'm the Director of Catholic Education in the Archdiocese of Canberra and Goulburn. We work alongside government schools, independent schools, very much in partnership. As you can see, we've got 22,000 students. Canberra is a very, very advantaged place, very, very privileged, but we're one of the only education systems in Australia with a significant footprint across 2 jurisdictions. We have a school at West Wyalong, we have a school majority Indigenous up at Lake Cargelligo. We have a school at Pambula near the Victorian border. In the Archdiocese in Canberra and Goulburn, we've got just about every school you can imagine. So I believe that the experience I'm speaking from, the experience of colleagues in the Archdiocese of Canberra and Goulburn, very much is likely to reflect in some way your own context. But we do have a distinctive understanding. And then the story I'm going to tell, I'm going to start just with some personal reflections. I'm going to talk about our systems learning journey, and I'm going to share some what I regard as very exciting results, and then distill, I guess, hopefully some of the insights that I hope will be a source of encouragement for colleagues here who are either well advanced or beginning what is likely to be a similar journey. And you can see that in our system, we have more than 1,700 teachers, we have more than 700 support staff, 9 early learning centres, 56 schools. So it's a very diverse system. It's not as large as many systems in Australia. It's somewhat intimate, but it's got scale to do some very interesting things. Now, just noting, so I work in Catholic education. So we are unashamedly drawing on, depending on your view, 2,000 or 3,000 years of intellectual history. And we have a particular worldview of what we're educating for, who the student is, who the human person is. So we're dedicated to faith in learning, and in our own context, we're refounding our understanding of the purpose of education, seeking truth, goodness and beauty. I could give a whole day's discussion on that, so I won't, but it's just acknowledging today we're here talking about learning. We're talking about the science of learning, and we think that is essential to achieve our goal for education. It's essential to be really good at that, because we can't provide the learning opportunities, the great instruction to the students in our care for them to become who they should be, to be human beings fully alive without our role as educators. So I'm not going to talk extensively about that, but we're also committed in our own context to it being integral and unified, not disparate, not having learning in competition with an understanding of the human, or learning in competition with humanity. We believe they're absolutely connected. So, my own story. This is a photo of Jedediah. There's some people here who know Jedediah, colleagues from the Archdiocese of Canberra-Goulburn. This is when he was, I think, about 4 hours old. He's now 6.5. And this was a pivotal point in my own learning journey as a leader in education, and I realised I'd become a father, and I had no idea how Jedediah was going to learn to read. And I thought, gee, that's pretty important for an educational leader to know. So this is Jedediah a few hours later, and I'd been doing some research leading up, my own research leading up to this event. And what I realised was that I should probably begin reading to Jedediah as soon as possible. So this is about hour 6 of Jedediah's life. 3 little pigs, we started. Now, what I know now, I'd realised that this might be a good idea, but I know that I'm not teaching Jedediah how to read in this photo, not doing that at all. What I am doing, potentially, is giving him a beneficial oral language exposure. And my brother, who came shortly after Jedediah, sort of laughed at me and said, "Why are you reading every day to this baby?" And I said, because I'd feel really odd sitting looking at the baby and trying to have a conversation. Much easier just to read something to give that oral language exposure. So that was the beginning of my understanding of the importance of oral language development and how it might be a precursor or essential to reading development, but I'm not teaching Jedediah here to read. I'm not following a whole language conception of Jed's going to be a better reader because I've read to him necessarily. He's absolutely better positioned perhaps to develop more oral language. So at times they were a bit bemused about the whole project, but we did keep going. And then, of course, we all know as a teacher, as a parent, not everything goes to plan. So I had ideas about I need to expose my children to letters and to beginning to understand letter identification and sounds. Not all the lessons went as planned. This is Benjamin. That particular experience went a bit off track. But of course, and I picked up a few things from Pamela Snow. The Pamela Snow report, or the Snow report, is absolutely essential reading for anyone who's not familiar with it. Some amazing blogs over the last 10 or so years. I'd highly recommend it. She used that beautiful phrase, theory-aligned, evidence-informed. So obviously in my work, I need a really good evidence base. I need a really tight research group. So I've got these 3. That's Jed, Ben and Georgina. And I'm also on the Senate of the Australian Catholic University. So they've got the ACU Book of Prayer, and they're going to give me some help critiquing that. And of course, we all share an aspiration for our children to absolutely be inquiring. So this is Benjamin, and we're checking out the Emily Nungwaray exhibition at the National Gallery of Australia. If you come into Canberra, absolutely check out that exhibition, because we do want our children to absolutely be fascinated by the world and inquiring. But I believe we know that is only possible if they have lots of knowledge to inquire with. So I'm now going to talk about our journey. In Canberra-Goulburn, we are setting out to be if not the best system in the world, amongst the very best systems in the world, in terms of the learning and teaching that we provide. We gave our learning and teaching initiative a name, Catalyst. It's not essential to understanding it, but it's a shorthand way for us to talk about what our learning and teaching ambition is and how we're approaching our aspiration. And we adopted that tagline, transforming lives through learning, because after deep reflection, we know the thing we can do for our students is absolutely provide them great learning experiences. And that is truly transformative. And I see every time I visit a classroom, one of the 1,000 classrooms in the Archdiocese of Canberra-Goulburn, there's truly transformative work being led by teachers to support the learning of students. Early on, we were trying to, I guess, give a framework to our own efforts and our own initiatives. We simplified what we were doing into these 3 areas. And there are other ways to describe the task of learning and teaching, but we found this quite helpful. So a focus on what pedagogy we were prioritising, that is how to teach, what curriculum we were committed to, what the students were going to learn, and then how to answer that essential question for any teacher: how do we know that what we have taught has been learnt by the students? So what are the assessment tools? And then we went through a lot of reflection and we realised over time that there's those 2 foundational sets of understanding, the science of learning and the science of reading. And of course, there's all sorts of talk in blogs and online. The science of reading and science of learning do not dictate the pedagogical solution, the curriculum solution, the assessment solution in any classroom, in any school, but they give us a rich, important body of knowledge that unless we understand its implications for pedagogy, curriculum assessment, it's likely we're neither theory aligned nor evidence informed. So if we can't give a professional account of how our approach to learning and teaching matches with the science of reading and science of learning, then we probably need to think some more about our approach. We read a lot, looked at a lot, listened to a lot. There's just three publications that guided our work. You can see the science of learning. There's a Centre for Evaluation or Education Statistics and Evaluation out of New South Wales about the cognitive load theory. And then that science of reading defining guide. So all of those, not definitive, but a really good starting point. And I'd just note that if you are interested in any of the work that we've done, if you search Catalyst CG, we've got a public-facing website with our resource guides, lots of information about what we've done, lots of links to resources we've found really helpful. So it's all there, publicly available. So we think that it's really, really critical in our system change to have very, very strong theoretical foundations, to have them very, very clear. And these have been important contributions to that theoretical clarity for how we approach the very difficult task of learning and teaching. We did a lot of reflection, and we came up at the start with these 2 bold goals. There's an argument to say we might need more, maybe there's too many, we don't think so, but we reflected on these a lot. Now, I just want to unpack them in context. Obviously, the first one, every student is a competent reader. It was very much based on many of the ideas that Pamela Snow has just shared, that we believe reading is essential to progress in a student's learning journey. Without becoming a competent reader, there'll be doors that are closed to the student, perhaps permanently. In Noel Pearson's 2022 Boyer Lectures for the ABC, he told an incredibly powerful story of Indigenous students, similar to the students that we heard referred to today. And really, if you take Noel's account, our task in teaching every student to read is a life or death matter for some students. It's certainly committing some students, if we fail, to a life of juvenile justice, prison engagement, all sorts of poor life and health outcomes unless we get reading right. So it's really important that every student is a competent reader. For me, that has two aspects though. Absolutely, in those foundational 3 years of primary school, we need every student experiencing success and making good progress with appropriate access to the interventions they need, the higher dosages. So we do need to see phonic knowledge, phonemic awareness, fluency, and all the other essential elements. But our goal, always and everywhere, must be to support all the necessary skills to achieve great reading comprehension of our students. But also, every student is a competent reader. It involves students having access to a lot of knowledge. Our aspiration, I believe, should be that our Year 12 students graduating from our system should be able to read books like Clive James's Unreliable Memoirs, know all the references in that book, and be able to make meaning from that book for their own lives. They should be able to read Milton's Paradise Lost and know the historical references, the theological references, and draw on that book to make meaning in their own lives. That for me would constitute fully realising this bold goal of every student as a competent reader. So it's not sufficient to get progress in the early years. We do absolutely want to move as quickly as possible from learning to read to reading to learn. That is really important, but it needs to be supported by lots of background knowledge, lots of rich vocabulary, and then we could faithfully say we were meeting that bold goal. I then just want to talk about high impact teaching practice visible in every classroom. Now, one of the important things, so we have 1,000 classrooms, and we want in every one of those classrooms high impact teaching practice to be evident as often as possible. Now, one important point there is that high impact teaching practice has to be defined. There are things, I believe, which are commonly referred to as high impact teaching practice in other systems, which I don't believe merit the name high impact. I don't believe they're theory aligned or evidence based, and we have to guard jealously what it is that we define as high impact teaching practice. For us, it's things like, or we've absolutely referenced cognitive load theory and its implications for instruction. We've referenced Rosenshine's principles of instruction. There is no magical definition. There's nothing you can deduce like in physics, like a law of physics. But I believe there's absolutely things which, if you look at them, do not meet the definition of high impact teaching practice, because they don't, with reliability, benefit the learning of 80 to 90% of students in all contexts. That's what we're referring to, is high quality in-classroom instruction sufficient to meet the needs of all students. So they're our two bold goals, and we believe we're making progress on them. I wanted to share then, as a result of our work, it's been going close to 5 or 6 years now in terms of process, and we implemented sort of at the beginning of the end of 2019, early 2020, with trials and pilots, and we'll probably be going 2 to 3 years in many schools with some of these changes, and we're far from where we think we can get to and where we can be. But these are the 8 big ideas. And one that probably Pamela Snow has explained a lot better than me, but school is where we learn biologically secondary information. That, of course, doesn't mean we don't help students with oral language, because according to Geary's definition, oral language is a skill we've evolved to acquire. But it does mean that we should constantly ask ourselves, what are we focused on in terms of schooling? Where do we make the biggest difference? Where can we have the biggest impact? So that is a very important consideration, and we shouldn't have all the professionalism, all the resources, all the institutional energy in schools focused on biologically primary information. It should be assisting our students to learn and succeed in acquiring biologically secondary information. Now, one of the big challenges I think, in education and in systems is to adopt a really clear and precise definition of learning. So we, after lots of reflection, I think this is Kirshner, Sweller and Clark's definition, that learning is a change in long-term memory. Now, that has profound implications if you adopt that as your definition of learning. And there's just 2 that I'll mention. So one is that what we know is that you don't easily get information into the long-term memory of students. You have to actually do it through repeated exposure, retrieval practice, and other, what I would describe as high-impact teaching practices and high-impact teaching practice strategies. So teaching can no longer just be exposure to knowledge. You have to have repeated exposure and desirable difficulties in the retrieval practice so that the information transfers to long-term memory. So you need to have an understanding of cognitive load theory, and you need to have an understanding of the implications of that statement for the teaching strategies, the curriculum strategies that you will adopt. So that's been quite powerful for us to think about what is our precise definition of learning, and we think that's a really good place to start. Not to say it won't change and evolve in the future, but a very important place for us to start in understanding the implications for that definition of learning for pedagogy, curriculum and assessment. Now, obviously, hopefully in this room, there's no controversy about that. Very often, I've seen in the past, across all sorts of contexts, teachers undertaking with good intent all sorts of activities that were neither theory aligned or evidence informed. And if we're a profession of high standing, a real profession, we should be holding ourselves to evidence and be able to demonstrate how our teaching practices, how our approach to learning and teaching is actually aligned to the evidence. And that is something we have to constantly check, constantly test, so that can we get ourselves more aligned to the evidence. Now, also in recent times, particularly say if you take the Australian curriculum as an example, I'd say in many instances, education has deprioritised knowledge. We've gone with a priority or a balance towards generic skills in many instances, and I would claim at the expense of a commitment to knowledge. Now, I'm a fan of many of Dylan Williams' propositions, and he's repeatedly said the problem too often in school education is that students don't have enough to think with, not that they don't have enough time or practice thinking. They don't have enough to think with, not that they don't have enough practice or time for thinking. And so we should all be concerned as professional educators as are we guaranteeing that students secure knowledge in their long-term memory so that they've got the power to use that knowledge to think with. So we have to have a very prominent account of knowledge in our pedagogy, curriculum and assessment processes. And that includes controversial things like learning times tables. So so some people might say, oh, you're pushing on an open door, this is not an issue. There is serious debate in many parts of the world about whether students should learn times tables. Now, I believe they absolutely should because they can transcend their working memory by learning their times tables. They can reduce cognitive load and they can perform mental functions that they wouldn't otherwise be capable of performing. And I believe that experience and example is analogous to all sorts of amazing things that our students can do if they've got access to knowledge in their long-term memory. Now, another very controversial thing. There's all sorts of systems at the moment. I was in another Catholic education system in New South Wales earlier this year, and I understand public education in New South Wales has made this declaration that explicit instruction is to be, and there's different ways of talking about it. Is it the preferred mode, the dominant mode? As professional educators, I've been sent videos by principals I work with, by people like Douglas Fisher, who's sort of well known in international education circles. He does this piece to camera and he says explicit instruction should never be used except as a last resort for the most disadvantaged students who aren't learning. Now I'm only superficially accounting his words, but that's the impression you're left with. So I believe there's no doubt for novice learners, explicit instruction is the most effective and efficient way for students to learn. And that is what we need to prioritise, efficiency and effectiveness in our instruction. So for novice learners, teaching explicitly should be something that is done regularly. And it is very efficient and very effective. Of course, for expert learners, like most of us in this room, we've got a lot of background knowledge. We hold it in schemas. We can deal with all sorts of stimulus, all sorts of inquiry, make meaning of that, draw it into synthesis. Not the case with most of the students we're dealing with in primary schools on most things. They do not have a lot of background knowledge unless we've imparted it. So that's our responsibility, and teaching explicitly is a very effective way to do it. Then, as Pam pointed out so clearly, the lessons from public health, our job, I believe, which is really hard to do on your own, by the way, it's really hard to be as effective and successful as we want as just a classroom teacher, as just a school, even as just one among many systems in Australia. It's very hard to do this on your own. But our goal to start with is to make sure the in-classroom instruction is meeting 80 to 90% of student needs, hopefully more, reliably. Then, accompanying that, we have sufficient interventions, supports and other programs to support those who are behind and hopefully extend those who are ahead, whose needs are not being met by in-classroom instruction. So the implications of that are that we will not run 5 simultaneous lessons in our classroom. We will not have a curriculum differentiated to the nth degree for every student. We're going to run excellent whole class instruction where differentiation is happening real time according to the student's needs within the lesson. And so my belief is that has a prospect of making teaching sustainable, of making the goal sustainable to achieve, but all students need to be able to learn through in-classroom instruction. Now, of course, I won't dwell on this, but obviously we believe reading is so crucial, and hence we've put it so prominent in one of our bold goals. But we do believe, unless we're achieving our goals on reading, and we know that's going to be in line with writing, oral language, grammar, punctuation, spelling, all of these things will be advanced with both explicit accompaniment, explicit attention, but absolutely the dominant vehicle is progress on reading, and it should be reading to acquire knowledge and knowledge supporting the acquisition of great reading skills and advancing in reading. And then, of course, we can't be absent the curriculum resources and materials that we've got. So it should be knowledge-rich, it should be ambitious, it should be coherent, sequential and cumulative. There's one ninth big idea that I just want to draw out explicitly that is obvious to me that we haven't prioritised enough. It's that we should treat every student's time for the 1 million minutes, roughly, that they're with us from kindergarten to year 12, we should treat it with desperate efficiency. We've been given a sacred trust for every one of those minutes, and every minute we use poorly, that they are not learning, they've missed out potentially on a life opportunity. And so we need to make our educational offering, our learning and teaching, incredibly efficient and effective. So we need to be desperately efficient with the time of students. So through all that, one of the profound insights, maybe, what's that story, is that, the definition of wisdom is you set out on a journey and you return home and you realise for the first time it's the place you want to be. This is one of our mantras, that the teacher's the most important learner in our system. It's very tempting to put the needs of students in the centre. We know that's the right thing to do, but we know if we put the needs of our teachers as professionals, the important professionals who are skilled, as the most important learner, then the learning and teaching that the students need will be absolutely taken care of. So we are doing an immense amount in Canberra-Goulburn to prioritise that and to be faithful to that. We're obsessing about the professional learning we offer, and I'll talk in a minute about that. I just want to mention one barrier in our own learning journey to the sort of improvement we seek in a classroom, a school, and a system. Now, so my experience is that when you begin to talk about what's going on, And I was actually at this initial teacher education conference, and they went one step further, and they said, not only are we already doing that, they said we know best. So we're already doing that might be the greatest barrier to learning for us. So we've got to be very careful. And I would offer that in education, too often we're actually doing philosophy. We're trying to work out what words mean. When people use words, they mean very, very different things. One person's explicit instruction is another person's multiple conferences. It's very, very diverse. So we need to be very clear, as Pam has guided us through, on precise definitions and understandings. And if we think we're doing it, we better go and check. We better go and check the fidelity. We better go and check the effectiveness. Because often we've all got something to learn. It might be the case that we're already doing that. Hopefully it will be followed by the words, but obviously we've got more to learn. And that can be a huge barrier to our own learning. And so I just want to briefly, in the time remaining, talk about, we realised that much of our professional learning effort perhaps was too ineffective in the models we'd pursued in the past. And we now believe, unless we've got these 4 things on offer for our teachers as the most important learners, we do not have a high likelihood of achieving sustainable change. So I just want to name them. We don't necessarily know everything we need to know. We have to have an understanding of the theory, not because we need to be experts in it, but we need to have enough understanding that we know why the practices we're pursuing are important for student learning, and that we know where we might be tempted to go wrong. So we need to know a lot about cognitive load theory, about high impact teaching practice, about Rosenshine's principles of instruction, about a number of other things, and we need to create the space for us to acquire that knowledge and to make that the centre of our professional discussion and collaboration. It's also our experience that in terms of really great pedagogy, it can be beyond our own imagination. It can be beyond our own imagination to envisage what it might look like. So we actually need to demonstrate what good practice can be. We need people to see it for themselves, not try and make it up from scratch. So we need a demonstration. Then, if we're to achieve sustainable change, we actually need every teacher to have a go at it for themselves, to practice it, hopefully in front of students, hopefully in front of a class, hopefully in a real school, not in an abstract, distant setting that bears little resemblance to what their normal work situation is. And then we need to reinforce the theory, demonstration and practice with opportunities for high quality feedback and reflection. So we've used the word coaching here. There's, like many terms, there's many, many, many definitions of coaching. Not all of them equally effective, some highly ineffective, I would claim. But we do need high quality feedback to inform high quality reflection for that reflection improvement cycle that we know is so important within the professional life of a teacher. So unless we get those 4 things, not all at once, not on a single day, but commonly in the experience of our teachers, we've got no chance of sustainable change in terms of great teaching practice. So that's what we understand as the necessary components to successful change through professional learning. Then I just want to provide just some insights. So we have put through more than 1,200 teachers have been through our high impact teaching practice, professional learning. That's of about 1,700, as you saw earlier. We'll obviously have to attend to the renewal of that understanding. So this is not a single experience. It's an ongoing experience where we need to continue to renew. For example, what we've realised this year, we're welcoming more than 120 new teachers to our system. We actually need a really strong induction so they get access to an understanding of our approach. So we've started that induction process very explicitly. We're using a number of early literacy programs. They're very effective. Our experience is they support the teacher really well with resources. we've got 90% of schools using the evidence-based literacy interventions across K-10 with very, very promising results, moving students from not being able to read to being able to read, sometimes after years of trialling other interventions that had no success. Then on assessment, we've declared an assessment schedule across all of our 56 schools, K-10. We will continue to refine that. Importantly, we're using the dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills, DIBELS. We've got about 90% participation rate across all of our primary students. And we're doing the phonics screening check. I'll show you some results of those. The DIBELS, for those who don't know, it's sort of about less than 5 minutes compared to running record of sort of approaching 20 minutes sometimes. We were doing running record. Sometimes running record was identifying 50% of our student cohort as needing intervention. We've got DIBELS that's giving very, very precise feedback to our teachers about the skills that our students have or haven't acquired, and very, very promising progress on that, and it's early days in terms of our use and sophistication. Then curriculum, you may have heard of it, but we developed in partnership with OCA a K-6 mathematics curriculum that I now understand has been accessed by 75,000 teachers across Australia. It's 3 lessons a week covering what we believe is a really good scope and sequence for K-6. And we are doing programs like Spelling Mastery, and we have 80% of schools involved in that. And we've got more than 200 teachers trained in the writing revolution, which we would highly commend. But with the caution that none of these programs is a single answer, but they can be a really good answer in a context where we've developed really deep professional understanding. And as I said, we've worked in partnership with OCA, and we think that's been great. We're now having our teachers say they've saved 6 to 10 hours a week regularly as a result of access to these mathematics resources. So we believe that's a really good success, and we'll be doing more and more of that. I'll just keep moving. So I just wanted then to say I'm a big fan of the statement that a reading list is more important than a framework. A reading list is more important than a framework. So these are some of the books that we've found, thank you. These are some of the books that we've found very powerful and useful. I'd also say that I think podcasts have revolutionised the ability for teachers to engage in high quality professional learning. The quality of podcasts available is just amazing, and I'd highly commend them. I'd say many of the presenters here are available on podcasts, and you can access them really easily if you haven't done that. And so we're seeing great success in our Catalyst approach. This is just a sample of what teachers are saying about when they're asked about it. So we assume that they're not saying this. 4 in 5 of them are very positive on different aspects of what we're doing. They're not saying this because they know I'm presenting to you and they wanted me to have a good slide. They're saying this because they've had benefits in their practice. And then this was an excerpt from a quote that was published in the Canberra Times in an op-ed. I've never met Anna Linnard that I'm aware, but she's running a reading tutoring business in Canberra. So then we'll just, a couple of things. This is our DIBELS to show you that we are tracking it. This is the selection of the year 1. It's very promising that we're able to get more students above the benchmark by the end of the year. This was last year. We're very excited about that. The insights that it can generate for us are very, very powerful. We'd commend consideration of it for other schools and systems. We're doing the phonics screening check. We don't need to do the phonics screening check because we've got DIBELS, but the phonics screening check is an amazing benchmark for us about progress against other systems. So we've hit, after 4 years, 70% of our students getting 28 out of 40 items correct on the phonics screening check, at least. And so we're very, very excited about that. And so I'll finish in a couple of minutes. So I just want to point out, so I'm not allowed to show you the names of these. These are other Catholic education systems in Australia, quite large ones. I'm showing you the increase in the average reading score on NAPLAN between 2019 and 2022. The green is us. So we think we're doing something interesting. in terms of improving our NAPLAN results. They're the changes in the other ones. Same things going on in Year 3 numeracy, same thing in Year 5 numeracy. So we're actually quite excited. Out of 28 dioceses in Australia between 2019 and 2022, on 9 out of 10 NAPLAN domains in primary school, we're in the top 4 in terms of improvement. So we think we're making a change, but that'll be proven in time. And then, of course, ATAR is more difficult to precisely describe, but we've improved our ATAR results by 5 points over that period. We believe, like this conference is, we're part of a growing national movement, which we want to nurture and support. So as I said, if you search Catalyst CG, a lot of our resources are there. If you want to reach out to me or any other team, we'd be delighted to assist in furthering your learning journey. And so we are very, very excited that we are doing the right thing by our students and providing them with great learning opportunities. And so I just want to commend again your work. And if there's something we can learn from you, we'd really love to learn it. If you want to come and take a look at some of our schools, see the great teachers in our system, see the great school leaders, you'd be very welcome. And we have already hosted a number of colleagues. But this is such an important topic, such an important journey. I just want to commend the rest of the gathering to you, because it is so exciting to see the progress that we can make as professional educators to literally change the education landscape in Australia and transform lives through learning. Thank you.